We're here to talk about what risk really means. Not in theory, not on paper, but in the choices real people make when the stakes are real and the outcome isn't guaranteed. Risk shows up in silence, in urgency, in loyalty, fear, and hope. It shapes what we build, what we protect, and what we're willing to fight for. It's not just personal, it's deeply connected. Every calculated risk leaves a mark, and the ripple it creates doesn't just touch one life, it echoes through families, businesses, and entire communities. This podcast is about those echoes, the ones that remind us that we're not alone in the decisions we make or the weight we carry.
Well, thank you for joining us today on the Calculated Collective. Our guest today is Jason Ingermanson, a businessman from Salina, Kansas, who has a few different business ventures, of which the largest one is JRI, owner of Freddy's Franchises. And Jason, the whole topic around this conversation today is about risk, right? I spend my world in the world of insurance, and we're evaluating risks and mitigating risks. And I've always been intrigued how business owners and entrepreneurs approach risk, right? I don't know that I would think of you as a risky person, me knowing you personally, but I'm sure you've taken risks in your business. So I guess if you'll start and tell me how you got into the Freddy's business.
Sure. Well, I'll start out with a risk. Okay. This is hot coffee in this cup, and I'm going to take a sip. Okay. And that's a risk right there, right?
That would be a risk.
So we take risks every day, and I was excited to talk about the topic because when you say that, it doesn't sound that exciting, to be honest with you, right? Yeah. But in everything we do every day, risk is involved. If you decide you're going to have kids, there's risks. If you tell your spouse that wants kids that you're not going to have kids, there's risks. And there's risks in everything you do. Specifically today, we're talking more business risks, and you talk about Freddy's and things like that. There was a big risk getting involved in Freddy's at the time. We have to understand, when I got into Freddy's and talked to the founders of Freddy's back in 2007, and opened our first store in early 2009 here in Salina, the risk was there was only 17 Freddy's, and a good portion of those were owned by the founders, not by franchisees. And a good portion of those were in, Wichita, Kansas, where it all started. So the risk of thinking that you're going to sign a franchise agreement and invest, at that point in time, probably $1.5 million to open the first location. Okay. The risk to assess there is that, there's two ways of looking at it. There's risk and opportunity, and you try and balance it out, and you try and flush out all of the things, right? I always say with any opportunity, I'm not just going to say yes to it, but as going through that opportunity, I'm going to say yes to different parts until I have to say, no, this doesn't work. That keeps my mind open and our team's mind open when assessing it, even the family's mind open when assessing that risk, to say, well, is this risk we can live with? Is this risk that we can overcome by understanding it more? And then, making the decision based off of all of those things. So I think that's a way of taking things that are risky, and maybe you're not going to make it overall less risky, but because you understand it better and because you've done your due diligence, the approach you take with it, you know the things that you have to focus on to minimize that risk as much as possible. So, like I said, with Freddy's it was a very young company. There wasn't a whole lot of them out there across the state. They were only in, I think, 4 different states at the time, and we expanded across 15 states. And 9 of those states we opened the first Freddy's in that state. So I remember in 2012 going to Northern Virginia and opening a Freddy's in Fairfax, Virginia. And everybody in the area thought we were Friendly's, because Friendly's is an East Coast brand. And so the risk of not having brand recognition, and we had to create that. So in a way, we were starting a new business that no one knew about in another state. So Freddy's has had a lot of risk for us early on. And then there's times along the way that risk gets balanced because things are going so well and you have a lot of brand recognition. And then there's different things that happen economically along the way that you have to be ready for, that, it presents itself in different ways. So
sure. You grew up on a farm in central Kansas, right? And I've always thought, and a bunch of our customers will be farmers, and in the ag space, I've always thought, gosh, that's about as risky as you can be, is to plant something in the ground and hope that you get rain all the time, right?
Yeah, farming's so interesting because when you grow up on the farm, you see it as a way of life as a kid. You don't think business minded as a kid. You think, oh, I've got to get up early in the morning in the freezing cold and go feed the animals. You got to, move the cattle from pasture to home and from home to pasture. And you go out and you work the ground and you're doing tasks for your family, but you don't really understand you're doing it to make a living, right? So I started on the farm at I was in the tractor at like 6 years old, moving hay bales. That was the first time. And I was with my dad from probably 3 years old until then, just itching to operate the equipment myself, right? I mean, just begging basically because it looked fun to me. It was very interesting. I mean, I was driving a wheat truck, a 1960s or 50s wheat truck, at age 7 down the dirt road to the harvest field when we were moving equipment. Those were just things that we did. And so for farming, for me, I learned the risk side of it more when I took over the farm than when I was growing up on it, because farming is so much of a way of life, and multi-generational farmers grew up in that. They didn't have the experience of a lot of things outside from the farm. So there's a lot of passion and emotion and things like that connected to the farm. Now, what that does is it creates a sense of pride that you're going to do a great job in your work. But what it lacks is understanding the risk piece at all, because they have nothing to compare it to.
Oh, sure. How'd you get from growing up on a farm into the hospitality space? And I would say that's what all the businesses that I know that you've got are kind of hospitality related, right?
Yeah.
Mocha's was your first venture.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I guess going from the farm to where I was growing up, I did two things. I worked on the farm and I played basketball. That was it. So had the opportunity to play basketball, get a scholarship to play, was working and needed a job while I was going to college at Bethany. I was there for a year. I left after torn ligament. But I stuck in the restaurant industry though. So I was working at Burger King while I was, going to college.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is I was going to college to be a coach. I was hoping to get into coaching, hopefully professional coaching as time was going on. So kind of leading towards maybe sports medicine or things, because you can go through trainer and then you can get into coaching and things of that nature. So the reason for coaching was I wanted to develop young people to create an opportunity for them to be successful in athletics. What I found in the restaurant industry or in the business industry in general, but this just happened to be my experience was at a restaurant, is I could learn things, be very dedicated to learning them, trying to be the best at things. And then I could take that knowledge and pass it on to someone else for them to be successful. And that might be a 14-year-old cashier that's getting their first job, and you're teaching them why it's important to be early for work. They have no idea.
Right.
I mean, this is their first job. I mean, outside of what they learned at home, they don't have any other learnings or experiences. And so that was exciting to me because I could probably impact more people in the hospitality industry is what I saw than I could potentially professional athletes, just because of the percentages. So that's what intrigued me to get into the hospitality industry it was really about coaching athletics to begin with, but then seeing the connection to what you could do with young people in the hospitality industry to hopefully become an entrepreneur yourself, and then hopefully create some other potential entrepreneurs in your business. And at the end of the day, maybe they get the opportunity to go do something on their own, right? So,
and as you're leading those young people through management and leadership, do you have any great success stories?
A lot of great success stories, but I'll tell you the one thing that really puts the exclamation on those stories is several years later, I still get notes. Now it used to, at one point in time, it was letters, right? We don't get those anymore. Right. Now it's more like a Facebook message or an Instagram message or something like that, right? And I'll get these message requests all the time. And I'm like, okay, it's probably spam or somebody trying to sell you something, right? Instead, so many of them are folks that worked for me clear back in Burger King, which was clear back in the mid 90s. That was like, it was their first job, or it was their first maybe management level job. And they're reaching out to say, thank you for the time that was given to them in order to teach them something. And then sometimes they say, I know I didn't learn it at that point in time and I failed in that position, but later on I succeeded because of the things that you helped me learn, or the advice that you gave me. Because sometimes we get advice as young people and we don't naturally put it to use right that moment. Sometimes we say, sure, whatever.
Right.
But then sometimes that connects later on in life and you're like, oh, what's
5
that
years
connect
ago,
to?
they said that to me. That's
Yeah. So to
gotta be
get
pretty
those,
powerful to get those.
types of statements, or to see someone walking down the street, or to come across someone that is now running their own business that they opened because, they worked with you. And it's not about the credit of doing it. It's about seeing that when we give into people and we give what we know to people versus holding it tight in, we create an opportunity to see them successful. And it's kind of like, Christmas is right around the corner. I don't know about you, but I hate receiving gifts, but I love giving them. And you just have a warm feeling when you've connected that right gift with that person that likes whatever you got them. And it just makes a connection. Right. And so that's the way I see it and feel when I see someone that I took time to invest in, that then took that and did something with it. And so
how many employees do you have countrywide?
So we're probably about 3,200 at any point in time right now. And we grow about 4 to 6 locations on average a year, sometimes more. And when we acquire, sometimes it could be 10 locations or more when we do an acquisition. So the amount of team members that come on board could be, from 300 to 400 a year to 1,000 or more, depending on, how we're growing.
So to take us back to risk, is it riskier to go acquire a franchisee or riskier to open up your own?
It's less riskier. So that's kind of like risk aversion, like you say, right? I can go select a location to the best of my ability. I can put the best operations team in that location to the best of my ability, and I can open the doors. And even after doing everything right, it could still not be a successful location. Sure. Now, you've done all you can to do your best to make sure it would be successful. But I can go look at an acquisition, know what these locations are already doing sales-wise, know what they're already doing profit-wise, know how they're performing amongst other stores in the system, and I'll pay more for that knowledge. So you'll pay more to stay away from it being as risky by acquiring. And also with costs, right? Costs have exploded over the last several years. I can go acquire a location cheaper than I can build one. And if you think about element of time in developing a location, it could take 18 months by the time you identify the location, purchase the real estate, build the building, open the doors. Before you can I can close on an acquisition in 90 days and the keys turned on and we're generating cash flow the next day.
How do you try to mitigate a culture when you go acquire something? They've got a culture there. You hope it's good. Sometimes it's not. Yeah. How do you try to mitigate that as you go in?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because there's a lot of the acquisitions we've done had great cultures. A lot of acquisitions we had done were great locations that didn't have great operations to be successful in. Okay. And so that would be typically on the lower side of the culture scale of what how their team's been treated and how their guests has been treated, and really the environment in the location. My objective is in a location, if you walk in, you feel like you went to grandma's house. It's warm, fuzzy, comforting. People are respectful. They're opening the door for you if they can get there. They're treating you with respect. They're learning your name, all of those things. And so we have core values that we follow in our organization. And then we have a few years back, I reflected on when I first started in business, when I acquired my first business in the Salina Mall, which was Paradise Coffee. When I left Burger King and a couple other organizations that I worked for in between to kind of learn how to do development, how to do all of the things that I knew I was going to want some experience in before I opened my own business. I had borrowed $30,000 from my grandparents to buy Paradise Coffee in the mall. Okay. And so there was risk there, more risk for them probably than for me at the time. But that was the first business. And so a few years ago, when we were acquiring a lot of locations and we were having to merge teams together, and we acquired Chompy's Deli in Arizona, and we were expanding Mocha's, and we were acquiring more Freddy's, and even, I think it was even around the time that we took on the country club as a community project to, kind of take the club and try and, determine how can we have this relevant for Salina for the next 100 years, because it was just a little over 100 years old when we acquired it. 125 coming up in January.
Yeah.
We'll be doing a little celebration. But to go back to your question so we run about everything we do now, and we filter it through our core values. And then we also have, I call it the JRI High Five. I identified 5 things that were important to the success of business early on. And I didn't recognize that I had those structures at that point in time. They weren't documented, but I reflected back and said, you know what, what did I use subconsciously, maybe without even knowing, to make sure that I'm doing the best thing for our people, for our business, for your family, for your partners, whether it's an insurance partner or a banking partner, in order to be successful. And so I kind of documented those, and I run it through our JRI High Five filter as well. So when we look to merge in folks or acquire folks, and these families are going to then have to trust us as now being the owner of this business, right? You go to bed every night thinking about, how are your team members being treated, and are they in a business where they're being respected and they're thriving, and how does that equal great community involvement and how they represent our organization in the community, right? They're going to model how you treat them. Number 2, I'm thinking about partners that you have, whether it's a vendor or whether it's an actual partner that invested in you and your business to be successful. And then last, I think about, how's my family feeling about all these things, and people that are close to me feeling about things. And those are the things every night before I go to bed, before I say my prayer, of these are important things that I need to think about every night before I go to bed. And so when we acquire, we run these teams and what we're acquiring through these filters, and we make an alignment. And the other thing we do is we run a good organization that we've acquired through these same things. And what can we learn that they've already been doing really well that maybe we can learn from? Okay. And then from all of that, then we say, okay, how are we going to align the people to be in the best positions for our business and for themselves in order to have potential to thrive in the future when these organizations come together? And so that's kind of the process that we go through to get to that piece of creating the environment for culture to be what you want, right? I always say we're always creating the environment for something to occur. And so we're always trying to put the right ingredients in there, kind of on a football field or on a playing field or a basketball court, the right ingredients. And then I always say we're creating an environment for some luck to happen, because you do a lot of the right things, but you need some luck.
Right? Along the way, yes.
And you have to have it.
What you talked earlier about when you were at Burger King, and you talked about working with 14-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you that I've watched us struggle over mm-hmm. the years. How do you bring in the next generation? What do you have any tips to work with a 14-year-old? Because as I'm working through your businesses, you're dealing with young people mm-hmm. who don't have experience and haven't learned from the rules of hard knocks, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah, it takes a lot. I think it takes a lot of reflection and strategy in how we do that. For me, I was a young person in the restaurant, so I have a little bit of experience of what it's like, because I remember having to lead people in the restaurant industry because I thrived in it so well from a lot of hard work and just listening to people that knew what they were doing and learning. I recognized that I had to lead people that were older than me. I had people working under me that were 15 years older than I was. I was, running a restaurant or running a training restaurant or whatever. And then we were developing people that were younger than me, but I was 19 developing a 14-year-old. So there was still a little bit of common ground.
Sure.
I would say as time goes on, those generational gaps have shrunk because of technology and different things. Now it's probably a different generation every 3 years. I don't know. Back then, you could be relevant in a 10-year span of people. Like if we were 10 years apart working together, we would have a lot of common ground. Now that's kind of shrunk to like maybe 2 or 3 years. There's not as much common ground. So 19, trying to develop a 14-year-old, there's a gap now already there in what they're liking, what connects them, what motivates them. So you have to understand what motivates each kind of generation of folks, and you've got to listen to a lot of young people that are around you and what they have to say, right? My job is to surround myself with a lot of people to give me a lot of ideas, not to twist my arm into what we're going to do, but to provide ideas so that I can make the best decision possible. So I have to listen a lot, right?
Okay.
Now, when I know it, I'm pretty much an action guy that's just going to go, right? I'm not going to sit there and contemplate on it for months and months. I mean, once we've gotten through the phase of provide me with all the information I need to make the best decision for all of our people, then the wheels are turning. I'm visualizing what that looks like, and we're going, right. And then I'm spitting back out pretty quickly, okay, here's what I think based off of these things. And with everything I do, I explain the reason why in great detail, because that's the only thing that matters to people. If you make a bad decision, that's one thing, right? But you better have a good reason why you made that bad decision. You better be able to explain those things to your team, because the most important thing is trust in anything that we do.
I've heard you explain the why to me in different settings over the years.
It's always the why.
You do it all the time. Mm-hmm. So we've addressed the fact that you're not risk averse in business. Mm-hmm. Are there any regrets that you've had when you looked back on something and thought, oh gosh, I probably should have done that differently or pivoted there?
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that there's been anything necessarily that I would say regret. There's some decisions that you make that didn't work out that you wish that you had the opportunity to change, go back in time and say, well, I would have done that different with what I know now. However, if I wouldn't have had that experience, I wouldn't know how to make a different decision. So I always look at things a little bit different than regret or failures. I look at them as opportunities and learnings. And as long as we don't do it again, then we're pretty smart people to the best of our ability.
Yep.
If we keep doing the same thing that broke the last time, then there's probably other names that people use than smart. And I'm not saying you have to be the smartest person in the room. I just think that you have to have a well-balanced way of looking at things and a respect for everybody around you, whether it's someone in your organization, in your family, or just someone in the community. No matter what you may have a difference of opinion on, it's about how you respect it. And like I always say, it's not what you have to say, it's how you say it. And so risk has been fun for me because I think of it as in, without it, the reward wouldn't be as good.
True.
It wouldn't feel as well. So I just kind of look at it as a way of, I understand it. I understand that almost everything we do is risky. But I also understand that I don't think the reward would be there for me or my team or our organization or our family and decisions that we make that are risky just for our family. If the reward wouldn't feel as good, the accomplishments wouldn't feel as good.
True.
Without understanding it, right? I think risk is extremely dangerous when you don't understand it, you don't think about it, and you just do it and you say, I'll just figure that out later. I think that that's crazy. But when you kind of understand it, then it becomes just this journey you're going to process through, and it's actually fun. Right. Because you're maneuvering it, you're experiencing a lot of things that you haven't before.
Learning.
There's anxiety to it. And if you don't feel anxiety, if you don't feel afraid, if there's not a little bit of fear or a little bit of scariness to it, I mean, it's a little bit hard to celebrate the success later on, or it's harder to learn from the failure. So that's, it may not be the fun answer that you want to hear from me, but there's definitely been regrets, but like I said, I look at them differently than that. Some people would call them regrets, but I don't call them that.
Talking about people, community, belonging, and you're taking over the Salina Country Club and trying to make it relevant for the next 100 years.
Yeah, I think that, I think country clubs have gotten different perceptions from different generations because country clubs have meant different things to communities during different times, right? And just like I always talk to you about understanding risk, you have to understand what you're doing. So I spent a lot of time right out of the gate just going to visit other areas that had country clubs, different types of country clubs, different revenue streams for country clubs, understanding golf more. I'm not a golfer, but I love sports in general. I love the outdoors. I love agronomy because of my growing up on the farm. So there's some natural things that you connect with, right? You don't have to love golf, but you can love a lot of things that have to do with golf to make you love golf, right? And I don't dislike golf. I just never had time to play it. Yeah. And I get to about 9 holes and I'm so bad at it that I kind of say, well, I'm not going to do the other 9 because there's other things that I'm better at that I could be doing right now. And so
I should stop after 9.
but looking at the country club and the community, right? And so anywhere that we operate, restaurants or businesses of any kind, community is very important to me. How do we connect? How do we give back? How do we put a smile on our guests' face because they're like, you know what? I go there. I have a great experience there. And look, they're at my son's ball game with a banner up on the wall, or where they're giving out custard cookies, or they have a coffee bar set up to donate, to give back. And like, wow, I want to keep going there more. I want to ask them if there's something that I need. They might be able to help me, and so, like I had started with, country clubs meant so many different things with so many different generations over time. And with that, though, they can also get a bad stigma like, oh, those guys are rich and they don't care about us. And that's just a rich boys club or rich girls club or whatever. And that's not true. In fact, maybe I could have even had that perception when I was young and didn't know, right? And so I always say, no matter what your time in your life looks like, what age you are, you have to have an open mind to everything. And please just always understand it before judging it, right? And so that's, because I remember early on hearing about the club and I was like, well, I could never be a part of a club. I could never be a member of the club. That's probably way out of my league. And as I became successful, and then I got to meet a lot of the club members when acquiring the club, and a lot of the board members and you, and understood that, so many folks here are just like me. There were people that grew up on the farm that didn't really have any kind of means of resources to be a country club member, didn't even know what that meant. I mean, our country club definition was definitely different on the farm than what the country club definition was. And so my objective when I saw it is get to know people, get to understand them. And, 95% of club members are probably first generation successful entrepreneurs that want a place to connect, want to give back to their community, and find common ground to collaborate with other business owners so that they can learn things, be successful, and thrive in the community for the right reason for the community. And most every one of them, if not every one of them, is someone that contributes to our community, gives back to our community, does great things for Salina. And so when I looked at that, I said, how can that not be a key element of our community to go give into? And it would really be supporting Salina in so many different ways, because if we can continue to keep that environment alive where all of these folks are collaborating that give back to our community, and we can add some fuel to that flame where they continue to have that space, maybe even grow that space, and then with the resources that might come from that club being successful in the future, we're outwardly giving back into our community. And we kind of focused, because of how I grew up in sports, we kind of focused on that give back through young people and sports clubs in town, even to the extent of Kansas Wesleyan. So you'll see us, donating or giving back or doing naming rights for the yard. Right. Because youth baseball is huge. And I think that's a big driver and a big need. And I love doing that through Kansas Wesleyan because it brings potential future professionals to college at Kansas Wesleyan and connect. So how can we connect with them through the club and do give backs? How can we do that with so many other local organizations, whether it's sponsoring a soccer team or any of those things? So we really said, hey, we can use this club as a way of sprinkling some positivity from ourselves into the community, as well as allowing club members that are already doing this to potentially do more of it because they see us doing it. And, I believe leading by example is a huge thing. You can ask someone to do something 10 times, and I'm not sure they'll get the buy-in to do it. If they see you doing it while you're also talking to them about it, the next thing you know, they're modeling your behavior because they see what it does for others. They see the look on the other person's face. They see the experience that it might create. So we're always trying to create experiences through the club, and that's why we've extended to hunting to horseback riding to other smaller properties where gatherings can occur, where you can learn about food. How do we connect farming, soil, food together and be able to display it at the club? So it's always been about, to me, people had a perception of the club being a take. And I'm not saying that that's what it was, but a perception is what I found. And so our objective was to push it out the other way in a connect, give. And you can't give everything away in life, but I say that you connect with people and you find the right places that's just a natural fit to give. And anonymously, you don't have to yell it from the rooftop. But a lot of times in regards to what we do from the club, we do a little bit because we're trying to, we have a captive audience of club members that have the ability to do a lot of great things in the community. So if they see us doing it, maybe it encourages more of that from them, etc. So that's kind of where the club came about. Those were the assessments of the risk that I was taking and thinking, well, with this risk, how could we transition that into reward? And how many people or how many communities could we reach or touch or be a part of or improve because of that?
That's fantastic. Thank you. So JRI future, you see just more growth?
Yeah, I haven't seen too many things that would say that we're slowing down in any way. I would say that we're always diversifying a little bit, right? You've got risk management with not diversifying, right?
Yep.
Can't have all your eggs in one basket. So we silently invest into other organizations or businesses that need capital partners. We do all of our own development. So if we're building a restaurant, let's figure out how we can diversify that risk a little bit by being the owner of the real estate. That gives us all kinds of opportunities, from long-term equity to reallocate somewhere to potentially selling on the sale leaseback market and taking some of those dollars to then put into other things to grow.
Right.
So we've taken our business of just being restaurateurs or hospitality people, and we've said, well, there's more than one business in the hospitality segment if you break it down, right? You're doing a whole bunch of different business things. You're buying land, you're developing, you're managing. We also offer our management services to other folks if it's the right fit. Most of those have to be not for just solely being profitable, but those management or collaborations tend to be community driven and focusing, how can we help someone do something that they want to do, but maybe they don't do operations for a living, but they really want something to thrive. So we might do a consulting or management agreement with them to operate their operations day to day. We do a lot of consulting with other potential franchisees. And then we do other types of businesses. I invest in farmland. I invest in other real estate that we might be building a strip center on in certain areas, and we do all that development in-house. So diversification is a big transition we're going to. Also, when you talk about risk, it's risky if you don't have a succession plan for your business or for your family. So another thing that we are focusing on is, having family meetings, having business meetings, and understanding who wants to be a part of this thing long-term, how are they connected to it, offering, ownership buy-in, with people that work on our team, so that they're not only a leader, but they're also an owner. And then, my daughter right now, both of them are going through succession planning in a way. Megan, my youngest daughter, she is kind of going to be the succession of community involvement and give back and community functions and what we do in the community, where Ashley is going to be more of our succession plan on day-to-day operations of our business. Okay. So they're going through that right now, where we have mentors that are third party outside of our organization that we've been able to connect through. And that's not just to call somebody that's on the list of mentors. It's actually knowing other people that we've done business with in the past that has had a great experience with someone they know that was a great mentor to help transition businesses as time goes on from generation to generation. Our son's 14 years old. Incorporating him into our family meetings when he was 10, the first thing you have to teach them to understand is confidentiality, right?
Sure.
Don't go to school and talk to your friends about our family meeting, right?
Right.
And so he took that on, and now he's 14 and he's asking some really good questions that that us being in it every day doesn't even think about, right? And so it's been fun to do those things. But again, as you talk about risk management, succession planning is a huge one.
Right.
So
Yeah, this sounds like you've taken a very systematic approach to that. Jason, as we kind of close this up here, you talked about working on a family farm. You go to work for Burger King. You buy Paradise Coffee. You buy Mocha's. Then you open Freddy's franchises. Acquired Salina Country Club. What an experience you've had. But if you could give one piece of advice to somebody out there today contemplating becoming an entrepreneur, what would that be?
Number one, go find some other entrepreneurs and ask them the questions, ask them the sacrifices that they have to make. Sometimes people see a result and they don't see the journey and the path to get there, right? They see, oh, wow, Jason, you have all these cool things that you enjoy to do and you have a little bit more freedom to do them. I'm clocking in at somebody else's work, right? And they just see that result, as I said. So reach out to other entrepreneurs that have had success in all different levels of them. Some that may have just started their business 6 months ago to someone that may be a third generation, and go talk to that third generation family person that now may be running that same business for all this time. And can you imagine what that family's went through with not only one succession plan to a second generation, but also went to a third? All of those things are important to know before you even start. And so, when you're on that edge, I would say, if you haven't done that piece first, if you can at all, take the time to do that and understand what it really means. Understand that of 24 hours in a day, you might used to complain or not feel fulfilled in the 8 hours you're clocking in for someone else. But understand, when you have team members working for you, you have to be responsible and around for them, just like you would be for your family 24 hours a day, if you really want to be successful. It does not minimize your window of people relying on you. It maximizes it if you're going to be successful. I think that's the thing that is the difference between entrepreneurs that aren't successful and are, is that the successful ones sacrificed everything. They pushed every risk to the hilt. They pushed everything to the hilt. Number two, after you've talked to the entrepreneurs and you understand what I just articulated, go talk to your family or anybody you're close with about, and make sure that they're on board with you being an entrepreneur, and make sure they're on board with the sacrifices that are going to be made. Make sure they're on board knowing that they might not see you for more than 10 minutes in a 7-day stretch at some point in time, right? You have the risk of losing your family.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the risk of losing a lot of things, right? Then I would say, go talk to someone at a bank or in a financial industry or institution, or come talk to you at, Iron Insurance, because these are all of the things that are the unknowns are your biggest liability, right? So the more knowledge that you can get, the more time you can spend asking all these questions, hearing their stories, and documenting those things, and then making sure that you square that all away with your family. And most importantly, after you've done all of that, you need to step away from all of it for a few days and reflect and square all of those things around with yourself one more time before you then say, okay, let's go. Because I think if you do all of those things and more, right? But at least take that in context of what should you be doing. And depending on what you're going to be an entrepreneur in, obviously, hopefully by the time you've got to the edge of pulling the trigger, you've already done all the research on what that segment of business may be, right? Because that's your biggest risk is that you're going to go do something that has no way of being successful to begin with, right? There's a lot of businesses that were great at one point in time. You don't want to be the one that goes and buys it when it's still showing some profit, and you think that you're going to go turn it around, because it may not need turned around. It may have transitioned into a dinosaur and didn't adapt to what we need today. And so you've got to understand all of those things before you take that last little step.
That's great advice.
It could be a cliff that you're getting ready to take a step onto or off of, or it could be a stairway to success that you're taking a step off of that cliff onto. And you want it to be a stairway if at all possible.
Jason, I'd like to thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us here today. I think your stories are very compelling, and hopefully we're sharing with some folks.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thank you for what you all do in the community. I think there's a lot of things that wouldn't be where they are today in the community without the things that you've done, and a lot of people don't know or may not, but I would just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yep.